It was supposed to be a celebration, a day of white dresses, champagne flutes, and fake smiles. But something about that morning felt wrong from the moment I buttoned my shirt. You ever walk into a room and feel like the air is just off? That was me, stepping into my wife's sister's wedding. Her name is Vanessa. My wife. Blonde, sharp-tongued, always a little too friendly with strangers. We'd been married 6 years, and lately, I'd started noticing cracks. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened that day. We arrived at the church 30 minutes early. I was in a crisp navy suit, smiling, nodding, playing the part of the good husband. Vanessa was quiet on the drive there. Too quiet. When we parked, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "Let's not make today about us, okay?" Weird thing to say at a wedding. We walked in. Her parents, Cliff and Margaret, were standing near the altar, chatting with guests. I approached with a polite, "Hey," and offered my hand to Cliff. He looked right through me. Margaret turned away mid-sentence. I thought maybe they didn't hear me. I leaned in and said, "Congratulations." Big day. Nothing. Not a glance. Not even a half-smile. Then came the kicker, Sophie, Vanessa's sister, the bride, walking down the aisle with her bouquet and glowing like the center of the universe. I stepped toward her and said, "You look amazing, Sophie. Congrats." She didn't even blink. Just walked past me like I didn't exist. I stood there frozen, like some ghost crashing a wedding I wasn't invited to. Everyone else was chatting, sipping wine, smiling like everything was normal. But I knew better. Something was off, and I wasn't going to wait until the cake cutting to find out what. Vanessa avoided me the whole ceremony. When I asked her to pose for photos, she said she had a headache. When I tried to talk to her dad, she grabbed my hand and whispered, "Don't cause a scene." That's when I knew. She knew something, and she was hoping I'd just swallow it like always. So I slipped out quietly, got into my car, sat there with the engine running, just breathing. That's when the first call came in, Margaret. I didn't answer. Then Sophie. Then Cliff. Vanessa. Her cousin. Her aunt. All in the span of 20 minutes. Call after call. Buzzing, vibrating, lighting up my screen like it was on fire. I turned my phone off. And I smiled. I smiled because I realized something that moment. When the people who ignored you start calling you in tears an hour later, it means you were never the fool. You were the storm they thought they could dance through without getting wet. You want to know what they found out? I had found the messages 2 nights before. Vanessa was in the shower. Her iPad dinged. I wasn't snooping. Just glanced. Then froze. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Bring the black heels. You know the ones." It was signed Blake. Not saved under work or gym buddy. Just Blake. Bold. Open. Confident. Like he knew he owned what was mine. I forwarded every message. Every picture. Every video. Even the one from our anniversary weekend when I thought she had food poisoning. She was with him. In a hotel. Wearing those same black heels. And that morning, before we left for the wedding, I scheduled an email blast. To her parents. Her sister. Every single person attending that wedding. The email went out at exactly 2 p.m. And that, my friend, is when the call started. You see, they didn't ignore me because they didn't see me. They ignored me because they already knew. They were protecting her, circling the wagons, thinking I'd just play dumb while they clinked glasses. They didn't expect me to go nuclear. So I drove away from that wedding. Alone. No music. No tears. Just the engine and the hum of my heartbeat slowing down. I had just detonated a truth bomb at a celebration of lies. And damn, it felt righteous. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't care. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I got home, tossed my keys on the counter, and just stood there in the dark. The silence felt heavier than ever. You know that kind of quiet where your mind starts racing, replaying everything that led to this moment? That was me, alone in my kitchen, trying to stitch together how the hell we got here. 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed Vanessa capable of cheating. Lying, sure. She'd always been slick with her words, twisting things just enough to make you question your own memory. But this? Sneaking around with some guy named Blake? That was a level of betrayal I didn't think she had in her. And Blake. The name sounded familiar. So I dug. Turns out, he was a mutual friend of Sophie's fiancé. We did beers a few times. Watched a few games together. He once complimented my grill setup during a barbecue. That smug bastard was sitting in my backyard, shaking my hand, while he was fantasizing about my wife. I found texts going back months. Stuff like, "He doesn't touch you like I do," and "I love how you moan my name." She'd respond with crap like, You make me feel alive, and I wish I could fall asleep on your chest every night. She never wrote stuff like that to me. I sat on the couch, scrolling through message after message. Photos I hadn't taken. Lingerie I'd never seen. A hotel receipt charged to our joint card. She told me it was for a work seminar in Denver. I even wished her good luck. She'd been getting good luck all right, just not the kind I imagined. At some point, I started laughing. The ugly, exhausted kind of laugh that turns into a cough. My hands were shaking, rage boiling under my skin like I could punch through a wall. But more than the anger, it was humiliation that gutted me. I'd been so blind, so trusting, and she played me like I was nothing but background noise in her little fantasy life. The front door opened just after 10. I didn't even flinch. Vanessa walked in, heels clicking, perfume hitting the room like she'd bathed in it. She stopped when she saw me. Her eyes widened just a bit, barely, but I caught it. That flash of guilt before she pasted on her usual fake concern. "You're home?" she asked like she was surprised. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Didn't feel like staying." She set her purse down carefully, like every movement was calculated. "You okay? You kind of disappeared." I leaned back on the couch, eyes locked on her. "They all called me, you know." After the email. Silence. You could almost hear it echo. Her face dropped for a split second before she caught herself. Then came the show, the furrowed brow, the innocent confusion. "What email?" I held up my phone. Scrolled to a screenshot. Don't insult me by pretending." I saw everything. The texts. The pictures. The hotel. Blake. That name hit her like a bullet. Her lip twitched. She turned away, pacing a little, trying to stay composed. Then she muttered, "You had no right." No right? I shot up from the couch, voice rising. I had no right to find out my wife's been screwing another man behind my back? "Don't yell at me," she snapped, spinning to face me. "You don't know what it's like living with someone who's always distant, always working, always needing everything to be perfect." I stared at her. "So that's your excuse? I work too much, so you spread your legs for Blake." She gasped like she was the victim. "You're being cruel." I laughed again, cold, dry, dead inside. "No, I'm being honest. Something you clearly can't handle." She folded her arms. "Maybe if you were more like him, more spontaneous, more romantic, maybe I wouldn't have needed." Needed? I cut her off, stepping closer. "You needed to betray me? To lie to everyone, including your own family." And then she said it. "He makes me feel alive." "You don't. You never did." That was it. The moment the love died. Not slowly, not quietly. It dropped dead right there between us. I walked to the kitchen, opened a drawer, pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared. I'd already made copies. Already called a lawyer. Inside were the texts, the photos, the credit card statements. I tossed it on the coffee table. "We're done," I said, barely above a whisper. "You can keep Blake. I hope he's worth it." She didn't cry, didn't beg, just stood there, stunned. I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't even take a bag. That night, I slept in my car, parked by the beach, listening to the waves drown out the last 6 years of my life. And I've never slept better. I woke up with salt in the air and a stiffness in my neck. The ocean was still dark, sky just bleeding into dawn. It was quiet. Peaceful. Too peaceful, maybe, for someone whose life just imploded the night before. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was suffocating. I checked my phone, 48 missed calls. 27 texts. Mostly from Vanessa. A few from her mom, some from Sophie. One from Blake. Yeah, he had the nerve to text me. It just said, "Didn't mean for it to go this far. Maybe we should talk." Talk? I almost smashed the screen right there. But I didn't. I screenshotted it. Forwarded it to my lawyer. That was all I needed from him. I didn't answer anyone. Drove straight to my buddy Eric's place. We'd known each other since college. He was the kind of guy who'd offer you a beer and a couch without asking questions. When I walked in, he took one look at me and said, "Jesus, man, you look like hell." I didn't even try to explain. Just handed him the envelope I'd been carrying. He flipped through the pages in silence. I watched his expression shift, eyebrows rising, jaw tightening. "She really did all this?" he asked. I nodded. Every bit of it. He let out a long whistle. "And that guy? Blake? Isn't that the dude from the engagement party last year?" "Same one," I said. Eric shook his head. "Dude was shaking your hand and banging your wife at the same time. That's another level of low." I sat down, my shoulders finally dropping. "I don't even think she feels bad." She didn't cry, didn't apologize, just blamed me, said I made her feel nothing. Eric looked like he wanted to punch something. That's bullsh*t, man. You were the one holding that marriage together. I knew he was right. I had held it together, while she was busy pulling it apart with high heels and hotel rooms. By the afternoon, I finally opened Vanessa's messages. Not because I cared what she had to say, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go. Please talk to me. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. I was confused. I didn't know you knew everything. My family is freaking out. Can we meet? And then the one that made my stomach turn. I don't love him. It was just something I needed. Needed. There was that word again. As if I'd been some kind of spiritual drought and Blake was her emotional oasis. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I did what hurt most. I sent one message to her father. The man who looked right through me at the wedding. Who wouldn't even shake my hand. I loved your daughter. I really did. But it's clear now you all knew. And still said nothing. I hope you treat your new son-in-law better than you did the old one. 3 dots popped up almost immediately. Then disappeared. Cowards, all of them. Later that evening, Vanessa showed up at Eric's. She must have followed me or checked my shared location. I heard the knock, and before I could tell Eric not to open it, there she was, standing in the doorway with red-rimmed eyes, no makeup, just a hoodie and leggings. She looked like the version of herself I fell in love with years ago. And I hated that it still tugged at something in me. Can we talk? She asked, voice trembling. I stood silent. She stepped inside. Eric gave me a look and quietly slipped out the back. Vanessa sat down on the edge of the couch. She didn't touch me, didn't reach for my hand. Just looked like a storm barely holding together. I don't even know where to begin, she whispered. How about with the truth? I said. She blinked a few times, then nodded slowly. Blake was a mistake. A terrible, selfish mistake. It started at Sophie's bachelorette weekend. He was there. We talked. I was drunk. One thing led to another. I clenched my jaw. That was 6 months ago. I know. She looked away. I didn't plan for it to continue. But when we got back, you were always busy. Always tired. We weren't connecting. And instead of talking to me, you started sneaking around like a damn teenager? She flinched. I'm not excusing it. I was scared. Scared of what? That I'd love you through another rough patch? That I'd keep fighting while you were already done? She had no answer. I was your husband, Vanessa. I know, she whispered. And I ruined everything. Silence. Then, she said something I'll never forget. I thought they'd hate you if they found out. I didn't expect them to hate me. I laughed bitterly. So it wasn't the betrayal. It was the fallout. She looked up at me, tears slipping down her cheeks. Please, don't end us like this. I stared at her. The girl I married. The woman who broke me. And I said, you ended us the first time you let him touch you. She didn't say a word after that. Just sat there, frozen, tears slipping down her face like she thought they'd buy her another chance. But I wasn't the same guy anymore. Something in me had snapped, and once it broke, it wasn't going to get patched back together with apologies and sad eyes. She tried again after a long silence. You have to believe me. It didn't mean anything. You did it for 6 months, I snapped. 6 months of lies. Planning. Sneaking around. Booking hotels. Making up stories. That's not some one-time slip, Vanessa. That's a second life. She stood up slowly, like her legs were weak, hands trembling. Can I just hug you? I didn't move. No, you don't get to touch me. And it crushed her. I could see it in her face, the realization that she had no more strings to pull, no more excuses to whisper. She turned to leave, but then she stopped at the door and looked back. Do you still love me? That question hit harder than anything else she'd said. I paused. I wanted to scream no. I wanted to throw something, flip a table, tell her I wished I'd never met her. But all I could do was stare. I did, I finally said. With everything. But now? I don't even know who I was loving. She nodded slowly, eyes dead. I'll go. And just like that, she walked out. Eric came back in 5 minutes later with 2 beers and sat next to me. Neither of us said anything for a while. You good? He finally asked. No, I said. But I will be. The next few days were a blur. I called my lawyer again. We started the paperwork. I canceled every joint account, transferred my half of everything, and locked down every bit of data she could access. I changed my passwords, moved into a temporary apartment, and left the house to rot until I figured out what to do with it. She tried again. Sent flowers. A letter. Left a voicemail crying and begging for another talk. She said she'd end things with Blake, said she'd do therapy, said she'd go back to church if that's what it took. It was all noise. Desperate noise. One night, I got a call from Sophie. Her voice was raw, shaken. "I'm so sorry, Nate. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know she was doing this to you. You ignored me at the wedding. I don't know what I thought. Vanessa told me you'd been difficult, that you were controlling, that you were a..." I closed my eyes, stomach twisting. Of course she did. She used me, Sophie said. She used all of us. She started crying. I didn't have the energy to comfort her. A few days later, I bumped into Blake. Yeah, that piece of garbage had the guts to show his face at a gym we both used to go to. I was getting into my car when he stepped out of his, cocky and casual like he hadn't just torched a marriage. "Nate," he said, like we were old pals. "Can we talk?" I stared at him, took a deep breath. "Talk? Sure." I walked right up and punched him. He didn't see it coming. Dropped like a sack of bricks. I stood over him and said, "Now we've talked." And I left him there, clutching his jaw, groaning. That was the last time I saw either of them. You'd think after something like that, I'd be broken, bitter, hollow. And for a while, I was. I drank too much. Slept too little. Every song on the radio pissed me off. Every couple I saw made me want to scream. I'd lie awake at night thinking about the sound of her laugh and how fake it turned out to be. But eventually, I started to breathe again. I got back in shape. Reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. Took a trip to Oregon just because I could. Nobody to ask permission from. Nobody lying to my face while texting someone else under the table. And the weirdest part? One night, while walking through a bookstore, I caught myself smiling. No reason. No one next to me. Just free. That's when I realized something important. It wasn't just that she betrayed me. It's that I let myself believe that loyalty and love were the same thing. They're not. Because loyalty means showing up even when it's hard. Love? That's easy. That fades. Loyalty, that's what matters. And she never had it. But now? Now, I do. For myself. It was about 6 months later when I finally stepped foot in the old house again. The one we bought together. Picked paint for together. Fought over the couch for. I walked in alone, keys jingling in my hand like I didn't recognize the sound anymore. The place smelled like dust and lavender air freshener, fake peace layered over the wreckage. The bed was still unmade from the last night we slept there. Her side untouched. I remember she didn't come home that night. Told me she stayed at her sister's after a late wine night. Lie. I knew it then. But I told myself it wasn't. That's the worst part. All the lies I told myself just to keep loving her. I walked through the living room, ran my hand along the edge of the dining table. We had Thanksgiving here. Her laugh used to bounce off these walls. But now? It just echoed, hollow and cold. There was a box on the kitchen counter. She'd come back a week earlier to collect the rest of her things. Left a note. "I didn't want to see you again. It would have hurt too much." It was scribbled on one of those cheesy grocery list pads with avocados printed on the side. I crumpled it, tossed it in the trash, and turned on the tap to wash my hands like the ink had dirted me. I was in the middle of cleaning the place out, packing up the last remains of what used to be a life, when the doorbell rang. It was Margaret, Vanessa's mom. I stared at her through the screen for a second, not sure if I was hallucinating. She looked thinner, older. "Guilt will do that. Can I talk to you?" she asked softly. I didn't respond. Just opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in like she was walking into a graveyard. I scanning the room like it was sacred ground she'd helped burn. "I didn't know," she said, after a long pause. "Not for sure. But I think I did." I folded my arms. "Then why treat me like a ghost at the wedding?" She sat down, wringing her hands like she was trying to strangle her own shame. "Because Vanessa made us believe you were the problem. She said you were cold, controlling, that you didn't love her anymore." I exhaled through my nose. She weaponized her own family. Nice. She always was persuasive, she admitted. But when I got that email, when I saw the truth, I realized we'd abandoned you. "Yeah," I said, flat. "You did." She nodded slowly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I regret it. We all do." I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who once called me the best thing to ever happen to her daughter. The one who used to bake me birthday pies. Who now sat here looking like a cracked porcelain version of herself. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "But I don't trust you either." She nodded. "Fair." Before she left, she turned at the door. "If you ever need anything, Anything at all. You can call me. I didn't answer. She left without expecting one. The house was quieter after that. Not peaceful. Just emptied out. That night, I went to the garage, dug out the box I hadn't opened yet. Our wedding album. Photos of smiles that lied. I flipped through them, one by one. Her hand on my chest. My arm around her waist. That moment I whispered something in her ear during our first dance, and she laughed like I was her whole world. Lies. Every image was a lie stitched in paper. But halfway through the album, I found something real. It was a photo from the honeymoon. We were on a boat, wind tearing through our hair. I was laughing at something she said, and she wasn't posing. She was looking at me like she actually meant it. Back then, I think she did love me, or at least thought she did. And it hit me. She didn't start out a monster. No one does. She became one because she never learned to face her own emptiness. She just filled it with anyone who made her feel wanted. And me? I spent years trying to fix something that was already rotting from the inside. I took the photo out, burned the rest. That picture sits on my nightstand now, not as a memory of what we had, but as a reminder that people can look at you like you're everything and still ruin you. Because love isn't what saves us. Truth is. And the truth is, I deserved better. And now I'm making damn sure I get it. It was around that time I started writing again. Nothing fancy, just old school pen and paper. Maybe because a screen felt too sterile, too disconnected. I'd sit at the coffee shop a few blocks from my new apartment, black coffee in one hand, notebook in the other, just letting it all bleed out onto the page. I wasn't writing about her. Not directly. But somehow, she leaked into everything. The woman in the short story would lie about where she was going, or the character's husband would have this sixth sense something was off, and by the last paragraph, he'd find her key in someone else's pocket. I wasn't trying to get revenge. I wasn't writing for an audience. I was just trying to breathe. A few months later, I got an invitation. Sophie had a baby. She'd married a good guy, someone quiet, steady, nothing like her sister. She invited me to the christening. Handwritten card. Said she understood if I didn't come, but wanted me to know I still mattered. That hit me. For the first time, I realized I hadn't just lost Vanessa. I'd lost a whole network of people. Her family, our mutual friends, the cousins who used to invite us to Sunday barbecues. I hadn't just been betrayed by a wife. I'd been exiled. I showed up anyway. Wore a dark suit. Brought a little stuffed bear in a blue box. When Sophie saw me, she hugged me like she hadn't breathed in 6 months. Thank you, she whispered. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't either, I admitted. During the reception, Margaret came up to me again. This time, with less sadness, more gratitude. I could tell she was trying to rebuild something with me, even if it was just a bridge she knew I wouldn't cross again. And I appreciated that. In a strange, sideways kind of way, it helped me understand something about people. How easy it is to be manipulated when love clouds your judgment. How guilt eats at you long after the fire's gone out. I left early. Didn't want to drag the ghosts into their new joy. As I walked out, I heard someone say my name. Vanessa. Of course. She was there. In the corner. Wearing a soft blue dress, hair pulled back. Holding a wine glass like she wasn't the root of everything that had snapped and burned. She walked over. Not too fast. Not like she expected me to run. I didn't think you'd show, she said. I came for Sophie, I replied. Not you. I figured. She looked down, nodded. You look good. You don't. That cut her, but she smiled anyway. That same rehearsed smile she used to give when she was lying through her teeth. I'm not with Blake anymore, she said. I raised an eyebrow. And I'm supposed to what? Feel sorry for you. No. Just. I don't know. I thought you should know. I looked at her for a long second. I don't care who you're with. What I care about is that you thought I was dumb enough to stay. She looked down again, twisting the glass in her hands like she needed something to hold on to. I lost everything. I nodded. So did I. But I built something after. What did you do? She didn't answer. Just stood there, small and quiet and pathetic. A far cry from the woman who once lit up every room she walked into. That was the last time I saw her. It's been a year now. I've moved to a new city. Different job. Different everything. I go hiking on the weekends, volunteer at a youth center, cook for myself. I even started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. But real. Sometimes, late at night, when the room is still, and the world feels soft, I'll think back to that day at the wedding, how everyone turned their back on me like I was invisible. How they all called me crying an hour later. And I smile. Not because it felt good, but because it was the moment I stopped begging for love from people who never knew how to give it. If I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. Not the heartbreak, not the betrayal, not even the pain, because that was the moment I finally saw clearly. And sometimes, clarity costs everything, but it's worth it. Every damn time. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the call from my lawyer. The divorce was final. All the signatures processed, property split, accounts closed. My name was no longer tied to hers in any legal way. It should have felt like fireworks. Closure. Maybe even revenge. But what it really felt like was silence, the deep kind that settles in your bones. I didn't celebrate. Didn't call anyone. I just stood in the middle of my kitchen, phone still in my hand, and let the weight of it all wash over me. It was over. Not just the marriage, but the identity I had built around her. The plans. The Sunday mornings. The entire version of my life that revolved around us. I was no longer someone's husband. And weirdly, I didn't feel smaller because of it. I felt lighter. Later that evening, I drove out to the lake, the same place we used to visit in the early days, back when everything was new and exciting, and neither of us had anything to hide. I parked by the dock, stepped out, and just stood there, watching the water move like it had no memory of anything that happened on its surface. I brought the last thing I hadn't thrown out yet, a small leather notebook she once gave me, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. Inside were notes, half-finished poems, promises she never kept. I'll love you forever. I can't imagine life without you. We'll grow old together. I lit a match and watched the pages curl and burn, one by one, until all that was left was a faint orange glow and a thin line of smoke that disappeared into the night. Goodbye, Vanessa. I meant it this time. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Not from her. Not from anyone I expected. It was Claire. We'd met 3 weeks earlier at the shelter where I started volunteering. She worked there full-time. Kind eyes, sharp wit, and a way of speaking that made you feel like you'd known her for years. We talked over coffee a few times. Nothing serious. Nothing rushed. Just real. Claire, I just saw the most ridiculous dog sweater at the pet store. You want to help me judge people mercilessly while drinking bad coffee. I stared at the message and laughed. A real laugh. The kind that doesn't come wrapped in pain. Me. Only if I get to mock the matching owner sweaters too. Claire. Deal. 20 minutes. Me. I'll be there. And just like that, I moved forward. Not toward a new love. Not yet. That wasn't the point. The point was choosing something that wasn't built on lies. Choosing peace. Choosing myself. The thing no one tells you about betrayal is that it doesn't just break your heart, it rearranges the way you see the world. You stop romanticizing pain. You stop making excuses for people who treat your loyalty like it's disposable. And most of all, you stop begging to be chosen. Because you learn to choose yourself. Every day. Over and over again. And if someone comes along who fits into that story, someone honest, someone real, then good. But if not, you'll still be okay. Because the person you needed to find wasn't her. It was you. And you're still here. It's strange how endings don't always come with grand finales. Sometimes they come with silence. With peace. With a slow, steady breath you didn't realize you'd been holding for years. I sat on my balcony that night, legs kicked up, a blanket across my shoulders. It was just past midnight. The city was quiet, and the sky was full of stars I hadn't noticed in a long time. Not because they weren't there, but because I'd been too consumed with chasing a love that was already dead. I thought about everything I'd lost. And then I thought about everything I'd gained. Self-respect. Clarity. Time. The strength to walk away from a woman who never deserved the love I gave. The realization that I had been loyal to someone who couldn't even spell the word. She once told me I didn't make her feel alive. But the truth is, she didn't even know what being alive meant. I did. I do now. Alive is sitting here, warm coffee in hand, with no lies circling my head. Alive is not waiting for another text to prove I still matter. Alive is not begging someone to love me back. I get messages from mutual friends sometimes. People saying she's changed. That she's quieter now. That maybe she finally understands what she destroyed. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. Doesn't matter anymore. I don't need her regret. I have my truth. And if I could speak to any man standing in the same fire I once did, I'd tell him this. Don't wait for her to apologize. Don't wait for her to love you the way you loved her. Don't waste years thinking you weren't enough. You were. You were more than enough. You just gave your everything to someone who didn't deserve anything. Walk away. Let her drown in the silence she created. And when you rise from the ashes, when you finally feel the air in your lungs again, you'll realize something. She didn't break you. She freed you. And now, you're unstoppable.